Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. At work yesterday, Samantha approached me with an unsettlingly casual demeanor and announced she had a date planned with a colleague. A date. My name is Andrew. I'm 32, and Samantha, my wife of nearly 8 years, is 33. We had chosen to live child-free, and until recently, I believed our marriage was stable and content. But cracks had started to appear. A few months ago, Samantha confessed she felt trapped, her life stuck in an unchanging cycle. She even suggested having a child as a way to bring some excitement into our lives. Though it wasn't part of our original plan, I was open to the conversation. However, after a couple of brief discussions, she dismissed the idea, calling it a fleeting thought. I brushed it off as a momentary phase of dissatisfaction, unaware it was the precursor to something far worse. And then yesterday, she dropped the bombshell. She calmly stated she was going on a date. Initially, I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but the serious look in her eyes quickly erased any amusement. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice betraying my disbelief. She was. She explained that her colleague Larry also felt stuck in the monotony of life, and together they decided to shake things up. "Just dinner," she assured me. "Just a date." She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Confused and angry, I asked, "Why call it a date?" My frustration was evident. Her answer was that she wanted to be honest with me, to be transparent. The word hit me like a slap. Before I could respond, she kissed my forehead, a dismissive gesture, and left to get ready. I sat there, frozen, as she slipped into her favorite red dress, the one that made her feel confident and powerful. A wave of helplessness swept over me as the reality of the situation sunk in. My life was unraveling. I needed an outlet, so I called my best friend Alexander and asked him to meet for drinks. Too ashamed to admit the truth, I framed it as a story about a friend whose wife seemed distant. Alexander tried to reassure me, suggesting it might just be an innocent dinner, but I knew better. This wasn't innocent. It was the beginning of the end. Samantha came home earlier than I expected, around 9:30. Her lipstick was slightly smudged, her smile strained, and an unsettling energy radiated from her. "It was exhilarating, Andrew," she whispered, hugging me with audacious enthusiasm. "Just what I needed." As if that wasn't enough, she casually mentioned plans for a weekend trip with Larry. My world crumbled. My anger choked me into silence. That night, I couldn't bear to share a bed with her and spent the night on the couch, sleepless and consumed by her betrayal. By morning, I had accepted that our marriage was beyond repair, but I resolved to make her feel the weight of her actions. As Samantha busied herself with preparations for her weekend getaway, I started making plans of my own. I wouldn't plead or argue. Instead, I'd ensure she felt the sting of rejection as deeply as I had. That Friday, I began my preparations in earnest. On Saturday, I hired a locksmith to change all the locks on our home. I packed all her belongings into black trash bags and stacked them neatly in the garage. While she packed her suitcase with excitement that evening, I quietly recorded her words, preserving evidence for the divorce I now saw as inevitable. Before bed, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "I love you, Andrew. You'll see. This will make everything better." She had no clue what awaited her. On Saturday morning, she left without hesitation. I watched from the window as Larry's car pulled into the driveway. Dressed in her red dress, she stepped out, blew me a kiss, and got into his car. I didn't move until they disappeared down the street. By noon, the locksmith had finished, and with the turn of a key, Samantha's access to our home and my life was revoked. I removed her name from the mailbox and prepared for her return. That evening, I stayed home alone, the house now an empty reflection of my solitude. When Samantha returned on Sunday night, she was a disheveled mess. Her hair was tangled, her eyes red from crying, and her red dress wrinkled. She tried to unlock the door, only to realize her key no longer worked. Panic took over and she began banging on the door, calling my name. I watched her on the security camera, her desperation painted across her face. Finally, I opened the door. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she demanded, "What is this, Andrew? Why are you doing this?" She tried to push past me, but I blocked her path. "You wanted excitement, Samantha," I said, my voice cold and steady as I met her pleading gaze. "Now you have it." Here it was, the moment my life came crashing down, irreparably altered. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" she implored, her voice breaking as tears etched frozen paths on her cheeks, her body trembling in the bitter cold. My phone was in my hand, playing the incriminating recording of her gleefully outlining her plans for an adventurous weekend. The blood drained from her face as she grasped the weight of the evidence. "You've destroyed us, Samantha. Now you'll have to live with that," I said with a cold finality. Her response was a flurry of panicked apologies, an onslaught of excuses blaming Larry, insisting it wasn't as bad as it seemed. But her justifications didn't matter anymore. She had made her decision, turned her back on us, and now expected me to fix what was irreparably broken. I didn't argue. I simply pointed toward the packed suitcases in the garage. "Take your things and go." "You wanted excitement? Go find it, alone," I said, slamming the door shut as her muffled sobs hung in the icy air. She lingered outside for a while, maybe hoping I'd have a change of heart. I didn't. The wheels were already in motion, divorce papers would soon be delivered, and there was no version of this story where she returned to my life. In the wake of her departure, I felt like a survivor picking through the ruins of a battle. I filed for divorce swiftly and ensured the papers would be sent to her parents' home. She didn't have a stable address anymore. Word reached me that she was staying with Julia, an old friend, likely unaware of the full scope of Samantha's betrayal. Despite leaving, Samantha didn't go quietly. She bombarded me with texts, calls, and desperate voicemails. Even her mother reached out, tearfully begging me to reconsider. But the betrayal had cut too deep. Each attempt to contact me reopened old wounds, dragging me back to the memory of her carefree laughter as she packed for that ill-fated weekend with Larry. The audacity, her disregard for my pleas, was a torment I couldn't forgive or forget. Predictably, she escalated. One Wednesday afternoon, as I sifted through reports at work, I overheard her frantic voice pleading with the receptionist. I stepped out to find her disheveled, clutching the divorce papers, her face puffy from crying. "What do you want, Samantha?" I asked sharply, guiding her to a side room while my colleagues avoided the scene. She shoved the unsigned papers at me. "I can't do this, Andrew. I love you. Please, we can fix this." I looked at her, a hollow shadow of the vibrant woman I once loved. The spark of arrogance and thrill-seeking that had defined her was replaced by raw desperation. "There's nothing left to fix," I replied. "You made your choices. Now you have to live with them." She broke into sobs, muttering about mistakes, admitting she'd sought excitement but found only regret. "You're the only one I've ever loved," she whispered. Her words made my chest tighten with anger. "You thought you could flirt with disaster and come back unscathed. You can't erase what you did." She reached for me, but I stepped away. "I've already given you my answer," I said, leaving her behind. The quiet that followed her departure was heavy, but oddly freeing. For a time, she stopped reaching out. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had started therapy, a step in the right direction for her, but not enough to mend what was shattered. I wasn't ready to let her off so easily. I compiled everything, text messages, reservations, a detailed timeline of her betrayal, and sent it to her parents' home. Attached was a brief note. "This is why I can never come back. This is why it's over." The next day I received a voicemail from her. Her voice trembled with fragility, each word interspersed with shaky breaths. "I got your package," she said quietly. "I understand now, Andrew. I see the damage I caused, how deeply I hurt you. I can't undo it, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know, I finally understand." Her admission, stripped of defenses and excuses, brought an unexpected sense of relief. For the first time, she acknowledged the magnitude of her actions. A few weeks later, the divorce was finalized without further theatrics. She signed the papers and returned to her parents' house, and I stayed behind, reclaiming the home we had once shared. I methodically removed every trace of her from the space, turning it into something solely my own. The silence that once felt suffocating now brought peace. In that stillness, I began to rebuild. For the first time in years, I turned my focus inward, rediscovering who I was without the weight of our fractured relationship. The solitude wasn't loneliness, it was liberation. At last, I could breathe, knowing the storm had finally passed. I embraced a disciplined fitness regimen, rekindled my love for hiking, and revisited painting, a passion I had long neglected. Throughout this transformative period, Alexander remained my steadfast anchor. He urged me onward, especially during moments when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me. Slowly but surely, I began rediscovering pieces of the person I used to be. It was during this time that Samantha attempted to reconnect. She sent a deeply emotional letter, once again expressing regret and detailing the steps she was taking to rebuild her life. I chose not to respond. Her acknowledgement of the pain she caused was enough for me. She had embarked on a separate journey, one that no longer intersected with mine. As the days turned into months, the seasons shifted, and so did I. The man I had become bore little resemblance to the shattered figure who had once sat powerless, watching his wife prepare herself for another man. I had transformed, growing stronger and perhaps wiser. I came to understand an essential truth. No matter how engulfing the darkness, the light is always within reach if you summon the strength to seek it. Then, during one of my hikes with Alexander, we encountered a group of strangers on the trail. Among them was Emily, a kind, approachable woman whose warm smile seemed to ease a burden I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Emily joined us that day, and as we walked, I found myself laughing, genuinely laughing, for the first time in what felt like years. Our casual conversations grew more frequent, eventually leading to my invitation for coffee. What blossomed between us wasn't a whirlwind romance, but something grounded and sincere. Through my time with Emily, I discovered a profound lesson. Love doesn't require grand gestures or theatrical displays. True love thrives on consistency, genuine presence, and mutual respect. And so this chapter of Andrew's life reaches a resting point. Samantha chose her path and faced its consequences. Meanwhile, Andrew refused to let betrayal define him. He reclaimed his life and found a way to move forward. Will Emily become his forever? Only time will reveal the answer. But one thing is certain. Andrew has learned that no matter how devastating the fall, there is always a way to rise again. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.